There we go. All right. Oh, oops. Hello.
California clothes on.
You know, I checked the weather obviously, and it was, of course they had it was actually really nice. It was 70s, mid to upper 70s, and then as soon as I left, it dropped down to like 60s, I guess. So, but I just brought shorts out. So this Monday morning, I head out to LAX, and it's even early in the morning. It felt fine wearing shorts, great. And then we land in Lansing. It's like 43 degrees. I'm like, oh, come on.
What?
You've got to be kidding me.
Close, yeah, 40.
Not cool
30,
at all.
41.
That was an unusual day.
Just rude. All right. Welcome back. So, Paul can check out on this one because we talked about this last week. So before Lent, long time ago, we made it to chapter 3 and got through most of it at the time. And so last week then we just sort of retread a little bit of chapter 3 and got to finished it off. So we've got chapter 4 tonight. And just to give you like the real brief, quick recap to bring us all up to speed, Galatians in general, is that Paul was writing to this church in Galatia, where he's surprised by how quickly that they're turning from the gospel to a new gospel, which is no gospel. And the problem that he's dealing with are this group of people called the Judaizers. So who these are Jewish Christians. So these are, Jews who believe in Jesus, who believe that he was the Son of God, died for our sins, the whole thing. So they are first century Christians, Jewish Christians. However, what they're doing is they're going around to all these churches and saying, yeah, we Jesus, absolutely. We love the guy. He's awesome. But you got to have the law too. You got to do stuff. You got to eat the right foods. You got to wear the right clothes. You got to observe the right festivals. You got to keep the Mosaic law, right? So that's what they're trying to do. And Paul is freaking out because, and we've discussed this, that Jesus plus anything is that's blasphemy. You haven't missed a thing. Don't worry, we're doing recap. In fact, what it comes out to be is, if your theology is Jesus plus anything, that anything is going to be the most important thing. Okay? Because what you're saying is, Jesus isn't quite enough. You need something extra. So if Jesus can get you 99% of the way there, you're not fully there. So what matters? That 1%. And that would be what we're adding to it. So Paul is not happy about this. And so what he does is he gets into, in a lot of chapter 3, is kind of looking back and saying, like, look, this is not how it works. The law doesn't do anything. And he explains in chapter 3 what the purpose of the law was. And basically he lays it down and says, look, the law was never meant to save you. The promise, he actually goes back to Abraham. He says the promise was given to Abraham. The promise was that you will be blessed through your offspring, meaning Jesus. So he said the promise started with Abraham. The law comes in with Moses, came after the fact. So he says the law can't go back in time and change the promise of Abraham. The law had its purpose, it had its time frame, but when Jesus comes, the law is no longer necessary, or in the same way that it was before. The law is still good, it changes now. in that it is a guide. It is not like the requirement for behavior. And the problem with that was, well, the people, from Sinai on, they couldn't get their act together. They were saying like, yes, God, we'll be your people, and then they immediately did everything that his people wouldn't do. So the law was always meant to point ahead to Christ, to show like, this is what God expects, and this is to show you how much you need something better than the law. And so the whole point Paul is saying is like, look, you can't go back to this because you have something better. And then when you add this to that, it nullifies the whole thing. So he's like, look, you can have the law by itself, and it's not going to save you. You can have Jesus plus the law, which they cancel each other out, and you're not saved. Or you can just have Jesus. And that's basically kind of his argument. So that's everything up to Galatians 3. You're good. Any questions before we jump into chapter 4? All right.
Is that gonna come up again? How do you pronounce that?
Judaizers.
Judaizers?
Judaizers,
Oh, okay.
yes.
Hasn't
that gonna
that
come
group
up?
been around since like the beginning of the young church?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, well, I don't know that we can point to an exact, like, this is when they started doing stuff. But I mean, right from the get-go, and if you go back to the book of Acts, I mean, part of the
Yeah,
problem
that's what I was remembering.
of the early church itself was, and even in the Jerusalem Council, was they're trying to figure out, like, we have all these Jewish Christians who are still doing works of the law, but we know that works of the law don't do anything, but it's still, I mean, it's not hurtful. If they want to stay away from bacon, it's like, it's not going to kill you. It's you can do that. But they were really struggling with how do you deal with Jewish Christians who have all these old kind of traditions and sort of their affinity for what they grew up with. And now you're bringing in Gentiles who have none of that connection whatsoever. And some of the vibe was like, well, and where the Judaizer kind of vibe comes from is like, well, I mean, we are the chosen ones here. And we recognize Jesus. We know how it's going. You guys, you're being grafted in. You're coming in, but, it was given to us first. The promise was for us first. So, it does lend itself to a certain hierarchy classification. And, I mean, it's not, you see it in churches today. Good Lord, worship styles is a big one for us, LCMS. You go to a church that has a very high liturgical, like very high church, all the smells and bells. Honestly, the attitude when they see like how we do it, which is kind of a little bit more relaxed, or even like a contemporary style, they're kind of like, well, we grant that you're marginally Lutheran, but really we are the real deal, because
Historically, what happened to that group?
still around in various ways, shapes and forms. Historically, they've probably ebbed and flowed, but I mean, they're still well, we call them Seventh-day Adventists now. Sorry, for all my Seventh-day Adventist people watching. I'll get back to that. Wait.
As far as what today, I mean, does this play in with our distinction between law and gospel? Is that part of it, or how different? We're always getting it mixed up.
I would. I see what you're saying. Yeah, kind of. Similar kind of thing. The question was, is this kind of like how we talk about the distinction between law and gospel, how if you blur those lines, you get in wrong places. Yeah, similar kind of, like, yeah. I wouldn't say it's exactly a one-for-one kind of relation, but it's definitely same category. Yeah. But then back to what I was going to say, Seventh-day Adventists. Seventh-day Adventists are, depending on which Christian you ask, they might not even be considered Christian, because they are very much, well, they don't worship on Sundays. They worship on Saturdays, which is the old Sabbath. They are pretty legalistic about holding to the Old Testament Mosaic law, that they can only eat the certain things, that they have to uphold certain of those laws. So, in all kidding aside, I would say, modern day for us, yeah, that'd be a group like that. you know.
There is a small group that every once in a while you see something about them called Jews for Jesus.
Yeah, that's a Messianic Jewish kind of movement.
Kind of thing.
See, I don't know enough about them, and I don't know that they are.
Either.
See, my gut feeling is that they're not like that, but they're more of a movement to try to convert Jewish people. So it's like, you know, they're Jews who have converted, so they're going back to their people, because usually they have their own thing going on. I think they confuse a lot of Christians, honestly, because they're like, what do we do with you? No offense, that's just limitations of our creativity and whatever. Cool. All right. It's going to be a fun night. Cool. Already getting into it. All right, chapter 4, begin with verse 1. I mean that the heir, he was talking about Abraham and like, that there's neither Jew nor Greek, free, a slave, yada, yada, yada. That, you know, you are all heirs, sons and heirs with whatever. So I mean that the heir, as long as he is a child, is no different from a slave, though he is the owner of everything. But he is under guardians and managers until the date set by his father. In the same way, we also, when we were children, were enslaved to the elementary principles of the world. But when the fullness of time had come, God sent forth his Son, born of woman, born under the law, to redeem those who were under the law, so that we might receive adoption as sons. And because you are sons, God has sent the Spirit of his Son into our hearts, crying, Abba, Father. So you are no longer a slave, but a son, and if a son, then an heir through God. So, his audience is kind of a mix of Jewish Christians and Gentile Christians. So there's going to be a little bit of weaving in and out of who he's addressing here. So he uses this illustration of a son, an heir, and how that works with the relationship between the Old Testament Jewish believers and the Mosaic Law. So he says, like, look, how this works is an heir, you know, a son who is heir to the riches of his father, you know, technically speaking, has ownership. You know, it's the inheritance is his, right? But a wise father doesn't turn everything over to the child until the child is ready, until the child is raised, grows up, taught, all that stuff. So while the heir is being raised and trained up, looks no different from the slave, right? Functional or you know, whatever, it looks like, well, they seem to occupy the same space. But Paul's point is that he's saying, like, it's only until the time is ready that the son receives his inheritance. So Paul's saying the son receiving his full rights, right, is not brought about or affected by the fact that he's being raised and trained. Like, right? It's not because the son is, or the heir is jumping through all the hoops and doing all the right stuff. No, the inheritance is his. The son doesn't have to be trained to receive the inheritance. The inheritance was always his. It's just that the father was keeping the inheritance aside until the son was ready. So what he's saying is the law was not the vehicle through which God was reserving this greater blessing through the gospel. Okay? It's not like he was saying, okay, Jews, you gotta prove yourselves to me. You gotta learn and do everything right, and then if at the end of and when you're ready, then I'll give you the gospel. He's like, no. The training was just like, come on, guys. Well, I gotta, you know, you're getting ready to receive what I'm going to give you. It was always God's work, God giving the inheritance, because an inheritance is something that is just yours, right? Or it is given to you. That's why, you know, the fun thing in the Gospels is where, you know, the parable that Jesus tells of the vineyard, where he's like, oh, and those people said, oh, let's kill the son so we can have the inheritance. It's like, that's not how inheritances work. I mean, it's really a flawed idea that, like, oh, if we kill the son, then the father will have to give the inheritance to us. No, that's not how it works at all. So that's the thing Paul's getting at here. So then he says the fullness of time, which is kind of a fun thing that he says here. In the fullness of time, God sent forth his Son. And you look at that in a couple different ways. Fullness of time, kind of the correct time. As the time that was fulfilled, God sent forth his Son, right? Sends Jesus. But it's also the fullness of time in the sense of the completion of time. The fullness of time. Which in our thinking, you have the fall, you have Jesus, right? And then you have the second coming. When we hear fullness of time, it's like that, right? Because fullness indicates completion, like the totality of time. So it's just kind of interesting that it's also the fullness of time is when God sent his Son. So you do get a little flavor of the now and not yet, which, it also kind of defeats any sort of like, well, are we still in training before we get the inheritance? It's like, no. Fullness of time, completion. So again, the completion of this day is we see that here, and here's us. Yay. And the Holy Spirit brings that to us. So we have the awesome thing about what the Holy Spirit does through the cross is completion of the fullness of time, coming back to the cross, and then delivering us all, not just the benefits of the cross, but the benefits of that too. Benefits of that being that you live free. You're not worried about tomorrow. Truly. You actually live in the moment because you don't care. Well, you don't have to worry about the past. Why? It's redeemed. Everything in the past is redeemed. The future doesn't matter. Because, why does it not matter? Because you already have it. It's already settled. It's already done. Mansion, place in heaven, new creation, all that. It's all secured for you. So don't care. Awesome. Truly, Christians should be the only people who are actually able to live fully in the present moment. And if you think to, a lot of kind of, people always talk about, I need to be present in this moment. There's a lot of, talk like that. It's like, yeah, it's people talk like that because it's important. It is important. And Christians actually can experience the fullness of that. I'm not saying nobody else can do it, but we really know what it feels like. At least we can. Sin gets in the way, but So yeah, it's an amazing thing.
We've got insurance. We're covered.
I was listening to a podcast about health insurance before I got here, so I'm like, oh, no. Because it was explaining how it all, anyway. Sure. Yeah, it's, well.
It takes the worry off.
Truly, yeah, insurance does deal with risk. So we don't need to worry. Well, and for us, risk would be like, yeah, what would it be to forgive, to let go, to love, to serve? Like, why don't we do it more often? Why don't we live like Christians? Because there's risk. What? Fear. Well, yeah, fear. But there's risk involved. Well, fear of what? I'm not going to have enough. I'm not going to be enough. They're not going to use it right. If I'm giving something to somebody, that there's all sorts of. We're all bound up with that. But if we're really, if we take this stuff seriously, who cares?
I think that's really interesting that you put the cross right there, saying that is the fullness of time.
I didn't say it. Paul said it.
I know.
Don't blame me for this. Yeah. Well, that is the interesting thing, because like in the fullness of time, it's more than just at the right time. Because I would say, even there's other places where it says at the right time, God gave Christ to die for us. He who knew no sin became sin for us. But this is the fullness of time. the fullness of time, and it's not just, it's not just the cross, it's God sending his son, but I mean the whole giving of Jesus for us. Which, if you really wanted to get fun, is like, well, that's anyway. But, yeah, it's kind of cool. Let's see. God sent his son, born of woman. That's important because he is true God and true man, 100%. I think I just did did I do a morning prayer on that one not too long ago? Divinity of Jesus and humanity of Jesus. I don't know. We can talk about that if you want. But, it's that, Jesus Christ is 100% God, 100% man, all the time, always together. You can't pull them apart. There is no separation or division of the natures. They are completely entwined. There are ways that you can kind of see where it's, like in Christ in his humanity sleeps, gets hungry. Christ in his divinity rises, walks on water, miracles, all that good stuff. So it's not like there's no switch. Jesus, when he was like getting ready to walk on water, didn't flip the God switch. I'm like, all right. Or the power ring, activate. Okay. 80s cartoons for the win. All right, born under the law. So that's important because he was placed under the law so that he could keep it for us, so that we might be receive adoption as sons, which again is all pointed together. Who does all the work? Jesus, and that's kind of the point. He's saying the law is useless. Jesus was sent to you. God did the work, sending him to you, placed him under the law that you want to follow. Jesus was placed under so that he could do the law, so that you could be. So while he does the law, what do you get? Adoption as sons, which doesn't work by you. It's God adopting you. So, yeah, through and through, God's work. The interesting thing here also is if you look at I'll read this kind of the way it's actually written in Greek. But when the fullness of time had come, God sent forth his son, born of woman, born under law, to redeem those who were under law, so that we might receive adoption as sons. There is no definite article with law. And that's important. Very important. Because the law would really pinpoint Mosaic law. 10 Commandments, Mosaic law, that's it. However, Paul does not say the law. He says law, totality. Everything God expects and demands of you. So it's not like he's saying like it's more than this. It's not just the Mosaic law that you are saved from. You are saved from all law. Everything God demands. You are saved from that, or from the demands of it. You are freed from the demands of that law. And we talked about last week, third use of the law means we're saved from the demands of it so that we can actually delight in doing it. Which, if you're like me, well, this makes sense to me. Because if I'm one of those people, I'm a terrible person. I love pizza. Sure, why not? I'm going to have pizza tonight. I'm going to bring pizza home for dinner tonight. It's going to be awesome. I've been wanting pizza all week. In fact, Peppino's is awesome, and it's Wednesday. I don't know what their special is, but if you get extra cheese and pepperoni on a Peppino, actually that does sound good now. I might still do that. Anyway, if my kids were to text me, say, "Hey, Dad, can we get pizza?" Like, "Hey, please, can we have pizza?" I'd be like, "No. I don't want to do it now because you want me to do it." If you tell me to do something, even if it's something I want to do, now I'm 49, I'm finally mature enough to be like, yeah, I'll do it. But inside, I'm dying because I don't want to do it. Guaranteed. It's just, I don't like being told what to do. I'm just a big, dumb kid inside. Can't tell me what to do. So this is exactly what he's talking about. The law is spoken to us and we don't want to do it. Right? Because what we hear is you have to do this. If you want God to love you, you have to do the law. That's what he expects from you. What's what he demands from you. I didn't want to do it. So what Jesus does is he takes away the demand. At least the condemnation of the demand. You know, the demand is still there. But being freed from it means that God is not saying, like, you do this or else. It's like, no. He's like, this is what I created you to be, and this is what I'm recreating you into. In fact, in Jesus Christ, you are created into delight the works of the law. So now when it comes to the law, we say, like, oh, I don't have to do it. I get to do it. I don't have to love people. I get to love people. You know, it's just the different point of view of seeing it. Okay, they must not be watching online because I was sure I'd be getting a text by now saying, bring home pizza. Sounds really good. Anyway, I didn't even have dinner. That's a stupid thing for me to do. All right, the other thing that's really cool is, back to our text here. Verse 6. And because you all are sons, you is plural. He's talking to all the Galatians. Because you all are sons, God has sent the Spirit of His Son into our hearts, crying, should be your hearts, crying, Abba, Father. So you singular, he switches. So it's really a kind of a fun thing he does. So he goes from like, now you all you Galatians are sons. And then he says like, you know, Paul, Carol, what's his face? Ron. You know, you are no longer a slave. You are not a slave. You are a son, and if a son, you are an heir through God. So he just makes it very personal, which is a nice touch.
If he had said sons and daughters, daughter would almost imply you're still a slave. If he called you a daughter.
Well, okay, so it wouldn't have the same thrust because he's talking about heir. So you got to contextualize it, but put it back into that society. So the question was if he added daughters to it, if that would change it so he'd still be a slave. I don't think necessarily to that degree, but by keeping it as son, which actually is more meaningful, especially when it comes to, you know, to Mary, Stacy, Mary, Carol. You are made sons. And when he previously said there's no male or female, so salvation has nothing to do with gender here. So he's saying like you guys are made sons, which means as females in that society, you wouldn't have rights to the inheritance. You couldn't be an heir, right? It had to go to the firstborn son, and then So actually, that has a kind of a bigger meaning, if you can go there, for you guys, because you are being made equal to an heir, which in that culture was like, whoa, I mean, very countercultural, very progressive for that time, and would be like, whoa, this is a big deal. So yeah, this is why like when there's some movements to try to like bring more equality into scriptures, and so sons and daughters, kind of more inclusivity. Who for us men and for our salvation, who for us people in our salvation, who for us. Some places it doesn't really matter. Like honestly, I wouldn't care if the congregation by and large said, you know what, when we say for us men and for our salvation, can we change that to like to us people? I'd be like, yeah, fine. It means the same thing in that usage. But here, you really can't change it because it does change the meaning, the original meaning. And honestly, it kind of lessens it in context. So yeah. All right. Any questions about that?
Just curious.
Yes.
At that time, were women, daughters, could they be heirs? I mean.
Could they be? I mean, I don't.
I mean, in the.
In the Jewish.
Yeah, in the Jewish.
I'm pretty
culture.
sure no. Like it had to go to the males. I'm pretty sure.
That one instance when there were like 5 or 6 daughters, and they came to the leaders and they said, look, we have no
Right.
No, brother, but we deserve to
Right.
inherit that land. And they said, yes.
Yeah. Fringe cases, exceptions.
Right.
I would say, not the usual order of things. Which I would think, the fringe cases would come up because, if you had daughters, well, you'd marry them off pretty quick, and then that would, go into that. And so we need Rachel here. She could answer that for us. Oh, wait. Oh, that's my mom. What if there are no sons? Never mind. Okay. Thank you, Lee, for anticipating my mom's question. All right, moving on. Verse 8. Formerly, when you did not know God, you were enslaved to those that by nature are not gods. But now that you have come to know God, or rather be known by God, how can you turn back again to the weak and worthless elementary principles of the world, whose slaves you want to be once more? You observe days and months and seasons and years. I am afraid I may have labored over you in vain. So now he switches focus to the Gentiles. All right? Formerly, when you didn't know God. So you Gentiles are part of this. You guys before didn't know God. Jews had the law. But what he's saying here is you were enslaved to those that were by nature not gods. So basically he's kind of drawing a distinction. Look, the Jews had the law, but that couldn't save them. You guys, here's the Gentiles saying, you guys. The Gentiles are like, well, you didn't have God. You had nothing. You had gods that were no gods. So you weren't in any better shape. Right? You were no better off. You were enslaved to those who were by nature not gods. I do like how he kind of saves himself or catches himself here. And not really catches himself, but now that you have come to know God, or rather be known by God. So he's like, yes, you've come to know God, but even better, you've been known by God. So he kind of turns it around real quick. Because yes, we can talk about knowing God, but just to kind of head off any sort of pride, oh yes, we've come to know God. He's like, God came to know you. So turns it around on them. And he's like, and you're turning your back. You're turning back again to the weak elementary principles of the world, which is law stuff. Whether it's Mosaic law or it's the law of your false gods. You're turning back to that. He's like, how can you do this? You're going from freedom to slavery. Jews and Gentiles alike. If you're going from any kind of law or from Jesus to the law, you're going from freedom to slavery. How can you do this? And Paul's point is look, you're by turning to the law. So again, these are Judaizers are coming in and trying to get the Galatian church to include the law. And so by bringing the Gentiles into it, he's sticking it to the Judaizers by saying, look, you guys think you're doing a good thing. By saying oh no, the law's good. We're just trying to add them to Jesus. And Paul basically says, look, you guys are doing the same thing as if you said, here, worship this carved image. He's like, it's the same thing. Doesn't matter. You going back to the law is the same as you worshiping any of the Roman gods. There's no difference. Because you're worshiping yourself, your works. That's all it is. And really, that's all any kind of idolatry is. You're worshiping yourself in a way. Because you're choosing your God. Whether it's money, whether it's Apollo, whether it's whatever. You get to choose your God. And that's the whole point of our faith is we didn't choose any of this. Baptism, God chose you. Scripture, I believe, says something to this effect. You didn't choose me, I chose you. That's the whole point. And then he talks about you observe days and months and seasons and years. He's talking about all the old covenant, so the law, right? You observe all the festivals, the seasons, the Passovers, this, that, and the other. And he's like, he says, by doing this, you're going back to slavery. And look what you're doing. You're observing all this stuff. I may have labored over you in vain. So he's like, I can't believe you guys. Did I waste all my good effort on you? So he's kind of frazzled.
Is this paragraph, or this verses 8 through 11,
Yes.
talking to the Gentiles?
Kind of both, but brings the Gentiles into the equation a little bit
Because I
more.
was wondering if the Gentiles also had days and months and seasons and years. And that would be pretty abominable if they,
Well, I think it actually kind of works on both levels, because if they're observing their old pagan years and festivals, he's basically saying samesies. Like if you observe, Sukkot, any of the Jewish festivals, because you're trying to appease God, same stuff. So I kind of take it like he's brought the Gentiles into the equation or into the conversation, but he's still, he's talking to everybody, because they're all Christians. It's just you got some Jewish ones and some Gentile ones, and they're all being afflicted by the Judaizers.
would Paul even go so far as to say that the Jewish Christians should not observe the Passover and the other festivals?
Yeah. I think he would, so like the Jerusalem Council was like, well, it's enough if you guys, well, it was actually for the Gentiles, kind of making them adhere to a little bit of law, because they were trying to like smooth things out over. I think the idea was like, you know what, it's fine to celebrate these things, but I think Paul, especially with his mission to the Gentiles, would make a bigger point about like, his whole thing was like, look, no, we can't bring the law into this. You're trying to, even to say like, it's kind of what we talked about adiaphora. Like there are things that are neutral, but they can become negative real quick if you're using them wrong. So I think that would probably be where he'd go with that. Cool. All right. Moving along. Brothers, I entreat you, become as I am, for I also have become as you are. You did me no wrong. You know it was because of a bodily ailment that I preached the gospel to you at first. And though my condition was a trial to you, you did not scorn or despise me, but received me as an angel of God, as Christ Jesus. What then has become of the blessing you felt? For I testify to you that, if possible, you would have gouged out your eyes and given them to me. Have I then become your enemy by telling you the truth? He's colorful. So there is he changes tone a bit, because first he's like, I've labored over you in vain. Like, I've wasted my time and energy. And then he's like, brothers, I entreat you. So, this is a good lesson. Like, we can't always just yell at people, even though it feels good. So he goes from what's wrong with you people to brothers, I entreat you. So, become as I am, for I have also become as you are. So what he means by that is adopt my stance here, according to the law, right? That live in the freedom of the gospel. Become like me. I live in the freedom of the gospel. I'm a Pharisee of Pharisees, right? I know the law. Become like me, okay? Because I became as you are, is that I adapted myself to you Gentiles. I didn't require you to become Jews. I didn't require your circumcision. So he's kind of saying like, look, let's get back and meet where we were, where you didn't have to become Jews, and you are now living in the freedom of the gospel. Become like me because I became like you. The ailment, no idea. Nobody knows. It was obviously significant enough that just mentioning it would be like enough for them. So don't know. There's some ideas, but whatever it was, somehow it made him very unappealing to them. That his condition was a trial to them. So whatever it was, I don't know. Whatever. Maybe he was. I'm not going to go there. Anyway, I have a few ideas, but it'd be very Luther of me, and I'm not going to go there. So he's like, look, I came to you. I had this ailment, and you accepted me. You accepted me without any judgment, and you received me as like an angel. because you're like, oh, yes, tell us this truth, and it was awesome, and like, yes, that was the freedom and all this good stuff. You guys would have gouged out your eyes and given them to me. Okay. Now, whether that has to do with his ailment or not, I don't know. It's maybe that. I'm going to use that in a sermon sometime. Like, you guys love me. I know. You would gouge out your eyes and give them to me. With like no context whatsoever, and we'll see how that goes. So he's like, have I become your enemy? Like, look, I'm just telling you the truth. I'm not trying to set myself against you. I'm just laying it out there. Questions about that one? All right. It kind of moves a little bit quicker. Verse 17. They make much of you, Judaizers. They make much of you, but for no good purpose. They want to shut you out, that you may make much of them. It is always good to be made much of it is always good to be made much of for a good purpose, and not only when I am present with you, my little children, for whom I am again in the anguish of childbirth until Christ is formed in you. I wish I could be present with you now and change my tone, for I am perplexed about you. So he's saying they make much of you for no good purpose. He's saying like they are zealous for you. They are trying to win your favor, right? They're saying what you want to hear, and they're trying to get you on their side, but it's not for a good reason. Clearly,
Wait a minute, who's they?
the Judaizers.
Okay.
So he's saying like they want. He's saying the Judaizers, what they're trying to do to you is all self-serving. Okay, they are not concerned about your spiritual well-being. They just want you to want them and to agree with them. Okay? They were zealous to win over the Galatians. He says they want to shut you out, which is to alienate you from us, from Paul and the church. They want to shut you out of the church so that you can make much of them, because they want to, all they care about is themselves. They want to puff themselves up, lift themselves up.
So the you would be the Gentiles? Is that what?
Well, the church, yeah. They want the church of Galatia and all the people there. Primarily the Gentile Christians, yeah. So he says, like, look, it's always good to be made much of for a good purpose. So, like, yeah, it's great when, when people make a big deal out of you if it's for a good reason. And what he's saying is, with this whole thing, is basically he's trying to make the argument to them to say, like, look, I am not telling you all this. I'm not trying to call you back to my understanding for me. I'm not doing this for my benefit. They are doing it for their benefit. They're calling you to their gospel just for themselves. I'm not calling you to this gospel for me.
Is that so, the Judaizers are doing this so their congregation gets bigger, there's more money in the offering plate?
Yeah, sure. I mean, everybody wants power.
So let's grow our church bigger and better, so we.
Yeah, yeah.
That's weird.
Well, plus, yeah. Paul, I mean, why listen to that guy? Why send your money off to Paul and his missionary journeys? He doesn't have the right stuff anyway. We're telling you the right thing. Oh yeah, power and any even a little bit and money, sure.
So you're talking about the two groups, the Gentiles, basically two groups, the Gentiles and the Judaizers that we're referring to.
Roughly, yeah.
Citizen-wise, are they both citizens of Rome?
Depends. Like Paul was a citizen, but I mean he wasn't. Not all Jews were citizens of Rome. Like properly speaking, they were occupied. So some of them might have been, some of them might not have been.
Okay. Was there a concept still as the nation of Israel, so that there would be a citizenry issue in this?
I don't think not as such, no. Because it was you. At that point, it's faith, kind of more than anything.
Like, the Jews were probably considered just more of an ethnic group as opposed to like a nation.
Yeah, because if you look at how all the Roman governors are handling all these little dust ups, like throughout the book of Acts when Paul's, he's hauled into court. the Romans are like, what the hell is wrong with you people? Because they're like, they treated the Christian stuff like, this is all Jewish stuff. Like, they saw no distinction. There's like, look, you're talking about, you say Jesus, you don't like the guy, but you like the guy, but you're all Jews, so why are you even bringing this to us? And so that was really that was the source of conflict. There were no roving gangs of Gentile pagans trying to reconvert the Gentile Christians. You just had the Judaizers who were trying to inject the law into it. They were believers. But the Jews were not, like, you didn't have roving bands trying to reconvert the Jewish Christians. They were just like, stone them, throw rocks. So, yeah. You looked like you were on the verge of something there.
No.
Okay. I saw the wheels turning. So I do like what he says at the end here. I wish I could be present with you now and change my tone, for I am perplexed about you. My comment on this is, even Paul knew how hard it is to convey emotion over text. Because he's like, I want to change my tone because I don't know what's going on with you. Like, I'm upset. You guys are, I don't know if you're upset. I don't know if this is coming across right. I wish I was there with you so I could change my tone, because clearly I'm worked up here. But I want to, he's trying to, like, make them understand, I'm not upset because you're turning away from me. I'm upset that you're turning away from Christ. Because I'm sure the Judaizers are they're talking smack about Paul. Why are you listening to Paul? Because that was the whole argument. It's like, well, yeah, Jews were talking about Messiah. Jews expected the Messiah, but Jews also had the law, so of course they go together. Paul's an idiot. We don't know what he's talking about. I mean, shoot, he was a Jew. What does he know? So, they are trying to drive a wedge between the Galatian church and Paul. So Paul's like, look, this is not about me at all. All right. 13 more minutes. We got this. Verse 21, tell me, you who desire to be under the law, do you not listen to the law? For it is written that Abraham had two sons. You know what? I'm just going to read. Anyway, I'll just read this part. Abraham had two sons, one by a slave woman and one by a free woman. But the son of the slave was born according to the flesh, while the son of the free woman was born through the promise. So this whole thing, this next section to the end here, he's going to bring in Ishmael and Isaac. And he's going to use them as a object illustration dealing with law and gospel. So he says, like, hey, don't you pay attention to the law? For it is written, so the law, the word, right? Is written, Abraham had two sons. Who was his first son? Ishmael. Ooh. You sit in the back. No. So Ishmael was born to Hagar. So, and so this is going to equal the law. Why? Because God came to Abraham and Sarah and said, I'm going to give you not just a son, but a nation, right? Nations will come from you. Well, what happened? They were old, and it wasn't happening. God gave us a promise. What's going on? So what did they do?
Sarah gave Hagar to Abraham.
Took the matters into their own hands. So they decided they would do something about it. So basically God said, I'm giving you a promise, and their response was, let us take care of it. And they have Ishmael. 14 years, I think, pass. And then, well, that's Sarah. And then God finally gives them Isaac. And it's kind of important that this is at the point where, according to Romans 4, what Paul says, he did not weaken in faith when he considered his own body, which was as good as dead, since he was about 100 years old. We all feel that, right? Or when he considered the barrenness of Sarah's womb. So they took the law into their, or tried to take the promise into their own hands, thus fulfilling the law. Meanwhile, God waited until Abraham was as good as dead, and not just his, body, but like, I don't think I need to, draw the graph of how babies are born. But, everything is not working. Everything's dead. And Sarah's womb is empty. Like, there's literally no way that these two, can conceive. And yet, the promise, God fulfills it, which is gospel. So that's what Paul is setting up here. He's like, look, don't you even know the law? Don't you remember how, the promise came and they tried to do it, and look what happened. Then God made it happen, which brings us into the next section, which probably should have been connected. It says, now this may be interpreted allegorically. These women are two covenants. One is from Mount Sinai, bearing children for slavery. She is Hagar, okay, right? Because they tried to do it according to the law. Now Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia. She corresponds to the present Jerusalem, for she is in slavery with her children. Okay, so he's saying, like, look, yeah, the current Jerusalem, the current status of the Jews, they are, which this would have been really offensive, still is, saying like the Jews of that time, they are children, essentially. I mean, what he's kind of saying, allegorically speaking, is like they're basically like Ishmael's line. This is very offensive. But he's saying like, no. So the ones of the promise are of Isaac, his line, right? The Jerusalem above is free, and she is our mother. So, I mean, he's saying, yeah, Sarah is our mother, Paul and these Gentile Christians, right? For it is written, rejoice, O barren one who does not bear. Break forth and cry aloud, you who are not in labor. For the children of the desolate one will be more than those of the one who has a husband. So, I mean, he's saying this all allegorically. So, you don't go back in Scripture and say, oh, this is exactly what this was all, this is what happened, or this is what it all meant. He's using that just as a device to teach them, to say, like, look, and using a pretty radical kind of move here to say, like, yeah, those in Jerusalem now, those who are living according to the law, this is their heritage. And, the children of Ishmael are not part of, they're not part of it at all. Meanwhile, we, the Jerusalem from above, gospel, this is our line. So, I mean, it's pretty radical stuff, what he says here. And like I said, it would be very, very offensive.
So
At least I think it would be.
Did that or did that not happen?
What?
The birth of Ishmael?
Oh, yeah. Oh, it absolutely happened.
Okay.
He's using the historical events to say, he's like, let me explain this to you, like using what actually happened.
All right.
Yeah.
I think he said like Ishmael, you're sons of your slaves.
Right.
Your slaves, you're not.
Yep.
The law makes you a slave.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, it's a pretty wild illustration, but I mean he uses extreme examples because it's extreme. The importance is you're losing that. So I mean, it's important that he's like, hey, understand this. And then he finishes off. So now you brothers, like Isaac, are children of promise. But just as that time he who was born according to the flesh persecuted him who was born according to the Spirit, so also it is now. So the thing is, like when Ishmael was a teenager when Isaac was born. When Isaac starts to grow up, Ishmael starts bullying Isaac. And that really upsets Sarah. And so Sarah goes to Abraham and says, send them away because this is not good. She's abusing our child. So God said, listen to your wife. Do what she says. So I mean, and he said, listen to your wife. Do as she says, send her away. Cast out the slave woman. So I mean, he's saying like, this. So as it happens today, he's like saying like, yes, these guys essentially are of that line, and they are bullying you. They are abusing you. Just as it was back then, so it is now. But what does Scripture say? Verse 30. Cast out the slave woman and her son, for the son of the slave woman shall not inherit with the son of the free woman. So, brothers, we are not children of the slave, but of the free woman. So, connecting us again with the gospel, but also reiterating, like, hey, if you want to live according to the law, you're not going to make it. You're cast out. Like, that's how serious it is. Boy, what would this look like if I had an even bigger board? Just think of all the stuff I could draw.
So was Sarah had Isaac, right?
Yes.
So was she visited by the spirit, angel of the spirit, like?
When she laughed, like, and she
No,
heard.
when she
Conceived.
impregnated.
No. It wasn't like it wasn't.
When God had
It was
sent an angel down with Mary.
with Mary, yeah.
Jesus.
Right. But not with Sarah. No, that was.
He just didn't want to, or?
Well, no. No. It's just he. It was. I mean, Jesus is a very special case.
Okay, how
was
would,
given to Abraham.
Yeah. I mean, Abraham was going to have a son. I mean, it was going to be Abraham's son. That's why.
So you allowed Abraham and Sarah to have a son.
Right. Yeah. He gave. It was. Wow. Did I almost say spiritual Viagra?
spiritual what?
Oh, there you go.
I need a timeout.
He allowed him to be.
Okay.
So if he was 100 years
Think about what
old,
I've done here. Okay.
Who was the 100-year-old guy?
Abraham.
Abraham.
You
So
sure
he
you
was-
wanted me back from California?
He wasn't involved in it, right?
No, yeah, he was.
God
See,
allowed him to be
yeah.
potent again,
yeah.
basically.
So, because the problem was when God wasn't Sarah wasn't becoming pregnant. So what they figured how they could do it was Abraham had to have a son. So they gave Hagar, the slave, to Abraham. So Abraham, I could draw that.
No, you probably had
Please
it right
don't.
the first time. You had it
Believe me,
right
with the way I
first
draw,
time.
you wouldn't be able to recognize it anyway.
You had it right the first time when you said it.
So yeah. So that's why when Abraham and Hagar do their thing, and they have and Hagar has Ishmael. So it's not until later where, Abraham is able to do his thing, and Sarah conceives Isaac.
But God promised him that Isaac's, right?
Yeah. But I mean,
So-
it wasn't just like you're going to have, it's like I'm not going to poof a son. It's like, no, Abraham, you are going to have a child. And the whole thing was, he was like, well, how? I'm too old. Too old.
Well, what about
I
Sarah?
really shouldn't
What about Sarah?
get a little raunchy tonight. Sorry.
There were the 3 visitors who came to give affirmation to Sarah.
Right, yeah.
So there was a visitation.
Yeah, there was visitation, but it was just like reiterating the promise and
But
that.
Sarah was pretty old too, I think.
Yes. And that was the point, yeah.
So,
Because they both realized that, if Abraham had anything left in him, this was their last chance.
so guess what?
Oh, God. Wow.
Is that what you're leading up to?
This class took a turn.
I'm not one that can
All
run
right,
around.
it's still Kelly House tonight.
What happened this last weekend? I mean, good Lord. I leave for one weekend and this is what happens?
That's because he decided to come back to Bible study.
You kind of
It
started.
reminded me.
Hey,
Sunday, it reminded
I'm not sure I agree.
It reminded me Sunday when I seen little Alex pulling what was it?
And a little dog.
A little dog on a string all around here going, I thought, well, maybe we could do, have a little animal on a string.
Did you miss him?
I thought children's messages were bad. Wow.
That's what I
There's a
want
bell, there's a
one.
bell curve.
Yeah. We'll just get another one.
So
Wow.
it's not too late for anybody.
Okay, then.
Well, if ever I was doubting if you were my people, I guess, and if you were ever wondering, like, what is this guy doing here? Well, look in the mirror.
Oh, my gosh.
I'm not really sure. Yeah, oh, that's right. I'm sorry. I forgot the train. Oh, So my mom got me a little train because I lost my train.
Aw.
So I don't have my train of thought to kick off the thing anymore. For this, no, the train of thought I would have had to set it on fire. But- ooh, that's my next thing, a little dumpster fire I can put up there when things really go off.
I see you got rid of all the stars. We have to start over.
Oh,
Got to start over?
well,
Do I get it started for?
you know, I don't
Get
even
one
know.
for that.
I'll have to think about that one. That's.
Don't think too long.
I'm almost afraid to ask if there's any questions. Yes, Lee.
Does Paul ever make an overture to the Judaizers themselves, and like try to bring them on board?
Not to my knowledge, no.
He had a different recommendation.
Yeah, his recommendation or his thought was, I wish they would circumcise themselves fully. So, if he did have an overture for them, it probably was not received well. So yeah, no, I mean, did he? I suppose it's possible, but we don't have anything. And given the tenor of his letters that we do have, I wouldn't imagine. Yeah, I wish they would finish the job. It's like, yeah. Boy, this was a lively one tonight.
Oh, my goodness.
Started off a little slow, but boy, did it pick up. Woo! Good stuff.
So,
Oh, I see we lost somebody online. No big deal.
Sarah, wasn't she promised a baby by, who promised her?
God.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Well,
Way back in Genesis, I think,
Yeah.
that happened, didn't it?
Yeah.
that's what I thought he did. So he was still doing it.
Yes, I'm just going to say yes. All right, well, that was fun. Can't wait for next week. All right, well, I think that's it. So, yes, thank you. Thank you, that was entertaining.
I got another question if you can
Uh-oh.
handle that one.
Should I go offline for this one?
No, it's all right.
Okay.
I would just, it's nothing to do with, I don't think, this, but
Oh, we can bring it back.
Mary was, Jesus' mother.
Yes.
When she died, she just fell asleep and then she woke up in the arms of Jesus. Is that right?
Well,
Did you ever hear that?
that would be church tradition. So that would be, was that the Assumption of Mary? So that's a Catholic teaching that it doesn't come from Scripture. It just comes from church tradition.
Somebody thinks it.
Yeah, I don't know if it was the way those things went. Some priest, nun had a vision. I would assume, but yeah, that's just a church tradition thing. That's kind of like the, there were 3 wise men. It's like, well, Scripture doesn't tell us there's 3 wise men. Tradition has made 3 because of the gifts. So yeah, or even Mary Magdalene being a prostitute. There's no scriptural support for that at all. It's just, it happens to be that like she's mentioned and then there's a story about a prostitute like nearby. And so people just, over time, it just kind of like, oh, must have been the same woman. So it's not necessarily accurate.
I was reading where,
All we know of Mary Magdalene is she was oppressed by some demons. That was about it.
where Christmas isn't the real birth of Jesus. It was a couple months earlier.
Oh.
I don't know how big.
Well, so that goes with like, if you track the Annunciation of Jesus is what, that's when the angel Gabriel comes and tells Mary. I think it's 9 months before the December 25th. So, they just like, okay, 9 months. Was it December 25th? Sure. Maybe, maybe not. I mean, It really doesn't, it's not really a, it's not a, like a doctrinal sort of like the date kind of thing.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
You know, the most we can do is going with like we can pinpoint festivals like Passover, like the crucifixion, because that all had to do with Passover, and that was based on the lunar cycles. So that we can actually, you know, you can go back and kind of track and figure out, you know, rough times and all that. But you know, for births and deaths, they, you know, they were usually, well, there was a tradition where, well, I mean, there is a tradition where I believe, like a lot of the disciples and saints, kind of like the festival days for them are, they died on their birthdays. Like that was kind of, because reasons. Yeah, I mean, we've got somebody who lived in, so you might have more insight than I do. With
Oh,
Catholic.
I think it's just arbitrary. I mean,
Oh, yeah. Well, I didn't want to be offensive.
right.
Better you say it than me. Caitlin's boyfriend is Catholic, so I gotta soften my approach. You gotta be like, all right, I'll lay off the Antichrist stuff. No, Caitlin's not watching. Get him for his birthday. I should get him a copy of The Power and Primacy of the Pope. Hey, I'm not going to do that. So anyway, anything else
Oh, that'd be it.
before I step in it any further? All right, cool. Well, that was fun, truly. All right, well, we'll be back at it next week with even more exciting. I don't know how we can even top this. I hope you had fun online.